Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving headfirst into a really fascinating and honestly pretty complex spiritual worldview. We're going to be unpacking a movement that essentially tries to weave together multiple major world religions, the very outer limits of modern science, and a fairly urgent warning about the future of humanity. Our goal today is to break down this unique cosmology and try to understand the radical solutions it proposes for a world that it sees as being right on the brink of collapse. Right off the bat, we need to establish exactly where all these concepts are coming from. All the source material for today's explainer is authored by one person, Shufeng, the founder of the Lifechanyuan movement. So everything we're looking at today represents his specific, highly comprehensive worldview, which serves as the absolute blueprint for the entire Lifechanyuan movement. We're going to look objectively at how he maps out the universe, so you can understand exactly what this philosophy is built upon. To make this dense text a bit easier to digest, we've broken this explainer down into 5 main pillars. 1. Origin and core beliefs. 2. Humanity's impending crisis. 3. 3 conditions for survival. 4. Bridging science and religion. And 5. Forging a new humanity. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Origin and core beliefs. The greatest creator and the universe. So, how exactly does Lifechanyuan define the structure of the universe? Well, according to Shufeng's texts, the whole thing is dominated by an ultimate entity called the greatest creator, and this creator operates through a sort of psychic energy known as Tao. The absolute core concept here is unbending equality. I mean, this force doesn't play favorites. Whether an individual prospers or a whole nation thrives depends entirely on whether they are aligned with the operation of this Tao. If you follow it, you prosper. If you resist it, you perish. It's basically a universe governed by strict spiritual physics. Now, what's really fascinating here is how Shufeng incorporates existing global religions into one massive cosmic hierarchy. He describes a universe made up of 36 mazes designed by the greatest creator. For instance, he claims innocent Christians might access the 1,000-year world, high moral Taoists the 10,000-year world, and Buddhists the Elysium world. So Lifechanyuan doesn't actually reject these faiths. Instead, it positions them as different destinations within a much larger cosmic map. And the key to navigating this map, it's not about how much money you have or your earthly status. It is based entirely on a person's spiritual purity. Moving on to Section 2, Humanity's Impending Crisis, Dancing on the Edge of a Cliff. Shufeng doesn't just keep things up in the high-minded cosmos, though. He brings us sharply back down to Earth, and he claims we are currently in what he calls the 5th year of the sun, essentially dancing right on the edge of a cliff. The text paints a pretty stark, uncompromising picture of modern civilization. It argues that while it took billions of years for the Creator to make Earth a beautiful homeland, humanity has basically managed to make it filthy in just a few short millennia. But the environmental damage is really just the surface. The text highlights a deep social rot. We're talking widespread hostility, constant fighting, and betrayal seeping into our most intimate relationships. Friends, spouses, you name it. On top of that, Shufeng asserts that our political systems are totally failing us. He views autocracies as disastrous and liberal democracies as flawed and far from being a cure-all. And that brings us to the core diagnosis of the Lifechanyuan philosophy, which is pretty unique. Shufeng argues that natural disasters, ecological collapses, even physical illnesses, they aren't just random acts of nature or a punishing God. No, he says they are fundamentally spiritual problems. They are the direct manifestation of humanity's bad consciousness and imperfect minds. The argument here is that we literally cannot fix the planet or our societies until we fix our spiritual alignment. Section 3. 3 conditions for survival, the minimum requirements for humanity. So if we're really on the brink of this abyss, what's the solution? Well, the doctrine lays out 3 very specific and surprisingly simple non-negotiable conditions. 1. Mankind must love the greatest creator. 2. Love nature. And 3. Love each other. Shufeng is incredibly emphatic about this. He states that without meeting these 3 absolute baseline conditions, human beings are simply no longer qualified to live in the homeland created for them. Honestly, it's presented less as a helpful spiritual suggestion and a lot more like a cosmic eviction notice if we fail to comply. All right, Section 4, Bridging Science and Religion, Seeking Complete Answers. To explain exactly where Lifechanyuan fits into all of this, Shufeng uses a really interesting metaphor about our current belief systems. He basically argues that traditional religions are giving us incomplete maps. For example, he claims Christianity understands the source of life, like where we come from, but can't quite see the vast ocean of where life ultimately flows. On the flip side, he states that Buddhism understands that vast ocean, the ultimate spiritual destination, but lacks clarity on the initial source. So Lifechanyuan positions itself as the missing link that finally connects the source to the ocean. Building on that idea, he also looks at the massive divide between science and faith. The text argues that both circles really only have half the puzzle pieces needed to understand reality. Scientists have deep, rigorous rationality, but according to Shufeng, they're blind to spiritual perception. Religious circles, meanwhile, are deeply attuned into spiritual perception, but they often completely abandon rationality. Neither side can provide a full answer to the mysteries of the universe on their own. So what's the fix? Lifechanyuan calls it great wisdom. This is the idea of completely fusing strict scientific rationality with deep spiritual perception. And the text makes a really wild claim here. It asserts that true sages who possess this great wisdom don't just look up at the stars to find the creator. They actually look down into the micro world. They perceive the creator operating as a non-material force at the deepest subatomic levels of reality. It's essentially an attempt to marry quantum-level physics with spiritual mysticism. Which brings us to Section 5, Forging a New Humanity, the Final Call. Armed with this great wisdom, what kind of world is Shuifeng actually trying to build? The text refers to this coming era as a great change, unseen in 1,000 years. To drive home why a unified belief system is so terribly urgent, the text features a really powerful quote from Yun Zhengqiu. The argument is that modern society is completely adrift. Because we have no universally agreed upon highest goal or ultimate standard, we have no real foundation for making judgments or finding meaning. The implication is that without a singular, unifying truth, like the one Lifechanyuan proposes, human existence is just doomed to remain chaotic and absurd. Then Zufeng leans into a pretty intense, fiery metaphor, using a quote from the English writer D.H. Lawrence. All humanity must be cast into the furnace so as to obtain a new humanity. It's striking, right? The text advocates for essentially melting down all of our individual differences, all our personal ambitions, and fusing them into a single, unified symphony of humanity. It's a very direct call to abandon the self entirely for the sake of the collective survival of the human species. So who exactly is going into this furnace? Well, according to Lifechanyuan, absolutely everyone. The text concludes its manifesto with a sweeping, radical declaration of inclusivity. This invitation transcends basically all worldly divides. Kings, commoners, the ultra-wealthy, the destitute. It explicitly welcomes followers of every single major religion, alongside members of political parties like communists and alternative movements like Falun Gong, and it even extends this deep cosmic respect beyond humans, to animals, plants, and literally all living things. The ultimate goal is to pull the entirety of existence out of a sea of suffering. And that brings us to the end of today's explainer, leaving us with a really massive question to chew on. As we objectively step back and look at Zufeng's vast spiritual blueprint, a plan that diagnoses all our earthly failures as a spiritual sickness and demands the total integration of human belief, we have to ask ourselves, can the vastly different, deeply entrenched cognitions of humanity actually be melted down in this furnace to create one unified whole? Or is Lifechanyuan's vision of a new humanity simply an impossible utopian dream? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive today, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.